Hi, I'm Andrew Rich, and if you're like me, you look at the state of modern wrestling discourse and think, wow, what a cesspool. That's why I'm here to tell you about Music of the Mat Remix. That's right, your favorite wrestling music podcast is back with a new format, where I bring on a guest and we play songs related to wrestling-themed topics. It could be a wrestling reference, a wrestling concept, a wrestling pun, things of that nature. Now you might be saying, Andrew, that is a very, very tenuous connection to pro wrestling on a wrestling podcast network. Is this just an excuse to hang out with your friends and talk about music and ignore the rest of the wrestling landscape? Yes. Yes, it is. So listen to Music of the Mat Remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, available on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. My name is Tyler Fornes. With me, as always, is Fred Moreland, and I have no quip today. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right. It is too hot to be sassy, so I'm just doing all right.
Yeah, and speaking of sassy, I think there's a lot of really interesting things that we can talk about here when it comes to the world of All Elite Wrestling. And we are recording this on Monday, July 7th. And that is just 5 days before All In, arguably the biggest show in company history. We can talk about how important the Wembley shows were, but I think doing this in America, considering what their attendances have been in this country, they've only done, I believe, one attendance over 20,000. That was the first AEW Grand Slam show headlined by Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson. And headlined by, it was the biggest match on the show, but it opened the show. And this is only going to be their second gate in the U.S. over 20,000 people. So it's going to be a big show. And it's arguably the best on-paper card that we've ever seen. And we'll talk about that in the heat check later on in the episode. But I kind of want to start off talking about some interesting things kind of surrounding the build. And I think the number one thing, Fred, that we should talk about is this Mercedes Monet creative control bid. And it's very frustrating to have this conversation. And it all starts with a line that Mercedes Moné had in an interview last year where she was pressed about if she had creative control. And she said, I have creative control and I work with Tony Khan very closely. And I think the way that was framed ended up giving people the incorrect idea that she has Hulk Hogan creative control, where she can just veto anything and do whatever the hell she wants.
Right.
Because it was later reported by Sean Ross Sapp and Fightful that everybody that they have spoken to when it comes to New Japan and AEW is that she doesn't have creative control. Nobody has heard that she does. And nobody's broached her with the idea of losing, which also comes into the factor when we're having this conversation about Monet. because she's getting a push. And I don't think modern wrestling fans understand that in America because of how WWE is booked for years and years and years and years. Everybody loses. It's 50-50 bullshit. So I think this whole idea of creative control, an idea of Mercedes getting a push, people just need to calm down, man. If it's done differently, that doesn't mean it's wrong. And it's so frustrating that these conversations continue to happen, and they're still happening now that we're 5 days out from All In.
Yeah, it's very silly that we are now 6 years into this company, and this is still happening. That everything is like, you have to do it exactly like WWE, or else it must be bad. And it's kind of like, no, that's not how it has to go. But but that's just where we're kind of stuck, and I guess it's going to take a long time for that to change, if it ever does, just because some people do want that to be the norm, or just are so used to it being the norm that they can't compensate for the change in the environment, I guess. So I don't know what else to say on it other than it's just kind of frustrating. But I think what we're clearly saying is just Monet's doing a belt collector gimmick. If any of these promotions didn't want her to have their belt, they would have said no. I mean, like, it's not like Tony Khan held a gun to CMLL's head or anything and said, you have to give us that thing you must, the thing the CML clearly cares about the most, which is their championships. If you know anything about CML, it's that they really do not focus on their titles. It is very unlike American wrestling in that sense. But yeah, it's just kind of, it's silly. It is the best word I can have for it. Is this panic that we have that Mercedes Mone is somehow holding Tony Khan captive or forcing him to put her over, when what we have is, as a result of this push, as a result of Mercedes, being booked this way and everything, is she is super over and she's going to face Toni Storm. And what I feel like is safe to say, with maybe one exception, the biggest women's match in company history. And the only exception, I think, you could argue the Toni Storm Mariah May one, the blow off, but I think that, we're talking about this big all-in show, probably their biggest show in American history. And you've got, there is an argument. I think at this point, I wouldn't agree with it, but there is an argument that you could put Monet and Storm in as the main event. So to act like that there has somehow been massive mistakes with creative here is just kind of crazy. You're on mute, buddy.
I muted both buttons because the dogs are going crazy.
Well, at least we got it out of the way early, right?
Yeah, I know. Hey, and you can still hear it. They're playing. Marcy's a little loud when she plays.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Nice little Boston Terrier. But yeah, I do think this is the biggest match in company history. And one of the reasons why it's the biggest match is Mercedes hasn't lost in the over a year plus since she's been in the company. I believe the only match she has taken a pinfall since she has left WWE was against Willow Nightingale when she broke her ankle at the end of that match, and they flipped the spot. Now, she did lose technically to Azumi in that three-way for the NJPW Strong title, or was it the IWGP? Either one.
Yeah, one of them.
But she didn't take the pin. So even though it's a loss, it's not a loss in that sense. She wasn't involved in the decision. So when you have somebody who's getting this mega push, and you have Toni Storm, who has built her way up into being arguably the biggest star in the company, on the same echelon as like Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, and Hangman Page. The reason why is because she hasn't lost. It's a big deal. If she had lost a bunch of times, it would have a lot less meaning and a lot less care. And this is why booking decisions matter. This is why getting a push means you don't lose. Now, Toni has done this thing where he has guys and girls lose a lot before their big pushes, but they still have great matches on TV. So Mercedes she just went all out. She's getting the mega push. And you know what? She's arguably the best women's worker in the history of the United States. Why wouldn't you give her the mega push? Like, the talking points themselves are just, they're so WWE brained where that's the only way things can work. Well, there have been many other successful wrestling companies who have done things completely differently. New Japan does things incredibly differently. They've been successful for the better part of 60 years. Like, Mercedes just getting pushed. And that's a good thing. It's making this match even better.
Yeah, we've got to just. I mean, it's not just booking decisions, excuse me, that matter. It's the fact that she's won over and over and over. I mean, I think that's the key thing here is it's not just booking decisions, but also straight up win-loss that matters here. And I think would be insane to change things just because I don't know a better way to put this, but it's the best way I have, is just so you don't hurt someone's feelings because that they have to do a job. That's not good business. That's not good. Not a good idea.
No, it's not. It's not at all. But I do want to take this conversation about Mercedes and have turn it into a different tone. And this is something that you were a little surprised by when I brought it up. But I think the Toni Storm and Mercedes Mone feud has a chance to be a huge paradigm shift in how people in this country view women's wrestling. And it's because the feud is incredibly sexual. It feels really weird to say that because we've had a lot of sexual elements involved in the world of professional wrestling for years and years and years. But it hasn't really been until now that the sexual nature hasn't also included objectification, where women have just been completely objectified. Jerry Lawler saying puppies all the time and bra and panties matches. Like, AEW hasn't done any of that. Now, they completely allow their wrestlers to be as sexual as they want. And that goes for the male talent too. They can dress how they want. They can be provocative. They can do this, that, or the other thing. But at the end of the day, what I think separates this company from other American companies is, even though, and I think, I'll be honest, I think TNA over the last 10 years or so has done a really good job of this too. At the end of the day, they're still wrestlers and they're still treated like wrestlers. And I think that's so important because when you and I were growing up, Fred, objectifying women was just normal. It was Playboy. It was fake boobs, bleach blonde hair. Like, that was what we dealt with in just our everyday lives.
In the monoculture, yeah. I think that's very fair to say. I do think that that has changed to some extent. I don't know how much. I think we're probably still falling short in certain ways culturally, but that's kind of a bigger topic than just professional wrestling when you get down to it.
It 100% is, but professional wrestling is arguably the worst when it comes to this kind of stuff. I still remember I think it was Trish Stratus and maybe it was Victoria where they had a mud wrestling match. Like, that's the kind of stuff you'd see in a bar 20 miles outside of your favorite suburb. Like, that's just not okay in any sense of the word. And Odie and Marzipan completely agree. They are getting loud about it. But what I think makes this so different and special, Fred, is this is a completely sexually charged feud. And not at one point did it feel like it just wasn't a story. It didn't feel like it was, hey, we're using sexual stuff to objectify these women. No, they're just people. And sexual in nature is just a part of the story. It's almost like the Golden Lovers, where their bit is like, hey, they're not just tag team partners. And that's where the Golden Lovers thing comes into play. But they're using these sexual elements to enhance the story. But at no point do you feel like, hey, this is gross, this is demeaning any of the people involved. And I think that's so important. You can use sexually charged storylines. You can use all of these elements, but it takes the right people to be able to maneuver and make it important and make it so it's not Playboy. Make it so it's not Carmen Electra and Pamela Anderson shaking their butts. And that's all they do. Like, they are still very serious wrestlers, just happen to use a lot of sexually charged elements within the course of their story. And I think that is so important with the growth of where this country is at. There's so many things wrong with this country, but I think here we're starting to see growth. And a feud like this can be a massive difference maker because it's the second biggest feud in the company right now. It can be a massive difference maker to everybody involved in United States professional wrestling from here on out. I think this is so important, and they're nailing it every step of the way.
Yeah, yeah, we will see how the rest of it goes. I am, just because of the history of the medium and everything, I am hesitant to say anything too positive before the end of the storyline, just because, wrestling has its history. But we'll, it could go well, and we'll see how it goes, I guess, is my kind of back out answer.
I do think they did need to nail the ending, and that's why I'm trying to speak a little bit in more broad terms, Fred, because you are right. There is still a chance that they completely botch this and screw it up. But it is a different style of feud that we've seen. They're taking everything very serious, but they're using, instead of elements of power and dominance to mess with their opponent, they're using sexually charged energy, and it's working. They're getting in each other's heads. I think that's been tremendous for multiple reasons. And it's just so cool to see this element of the business being taken so seriously by everybody involved. And I've seen, and I'm not in the depths of wrestling Twitter, but I haven't seen people complaining about it from a sexual nature either, where it's just like, oh, this is stupid. Oh, this is gross. It's just a normal storyline. Yeah, I agree, Marzipan. I think that's good.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely seems to have a much better tenor than previous angles, and I think that is worth praising. So,
I absolutely think it's worth praising, and I'm glad you had so much to say on the subject, Fred. Because
sorry,
great input.
I just don't have big takes on this subject, so I just kind of wanted you to go on it for a while, frankly.
No, I agree. I know you didn't have big takes on it. I can't stop thinking about that. Well, honestly, what I can't stop thinking about is Mystico's entrance at Grand Slam, which is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in pro wrestling. Yep, I agree, Marzipan. We got a new wrestling pundit here, Fred.
Hell yeah.
Marzipan's ready to join the show. But yeah, I think that's the most important thing. It feels like real pro wrestling instead of just sexually charged objectification, and that's good. It's a step forward for this country. Let's just say that. Fred, I think there are a couple more things we should talk about here before the heat check, and one of those things is I think we need to talk about counter programming and all in, because I think that there's layers of positive for WWE and negative for AEW, but I also think the inverse is true, because ticket sales for those shows have not been going well. The NXT Great American Bash, I believe, only has like 600 or 700 tickets sold so far. Saturday night's main event, now that's sold over 10,000. That's also Goldberg's quote unquote final match. I don't know if that's been made official or if that's just kind of the scuttlebutt right now. But
I
then
think
you
it is
also have
official, more or less.
then Evolution, the second women's only pay per view, has about 4,000 tickets sold. Like, at what point are we really going to just see diminishing returns here, Fred? These shows should have a significant amount more tickets sold than they do. Like, is it? Are we just going to have Marzipan? Calm down. I know. Are we just going to have a situation here where they're just going to keep like for lack of a better term, like slapping their money on the table and just be like, no, we're bigger than you and we know it, and we're going to continue to throw our weight around. But at what point does WWE look at this, especially with how TKO operates their business versus how Vince McMahon used 2 years ago when it came to stuff like counter programming, because he did it with Starcade and all that kind of stuff. But at what point do they just see this isn't working and we need to stop?
Well, you have to wonder if the ticket sales this weekend will send that message. I do think that there have been signs this year that WWE is on the downslide from their peak of popularity. Maybe they'll reverse it at some point. If I had a bet, I think they have gone past the peak. And I'm not saying they're going to drop down to, I don't know, 2009 or whatever, or the point where AEW's ratings nearly met, WWE's ratings that 1 week. But still, it is, I think, there's some indications. Now, again, is this just a dip or is this like them heading towards new normal? We really won't know until like 3 or 6 months down the road. But the key thing, I think, is I really do think that what they're trying to do basically is make people say, I've watched Great American Bash and I've watched Evolution and I watched the NXT, Great American Bash is the NXT show. I watched the other show that's happening this weekend, and that means that I am too tired to watch AEW. But what I think they're at danger of doing, and what they are doing, frankly, is I think that they are exhausting their own fans. If their fans are saying, I don't want to watch all 3 of your shows. Now, is that because they want to watch All In? I don't know. I don't think inherently. It could just be that 1 or 2 of the WWE shows this weekend is enough for them, and they have no intention of watching AEW. But what I think is, I think what Tony Khan said that they were at nearing a $3 million gate this weekend, which you can't classify that as anything but a wild success. Not just a success, but a great one. Easily the greatest American gate by like a huge margin.
And third in company history behind the Wembley.
The Wembleys, right? Yeah. So, there's just no way that you can call what AEW is doing a success. And on the other hand, I think that, at least this weekend, WWE's attempts to make them fail, which is what it is. WWE wants to keep AEW from growing, and that's why they're booking these shows like this. I think that they're kind of reaching a point where you could argue WWE's doing more harm to themselves than AEW. And a sane business at that point would ask themselves, should we change our strategy? Now, will WWE? I'm not holding my breath. I think the difference there is it's just so ingrained in the WWE culture and the TKO culture at large, because look at how UFC treated its competitors for years and years. That I think even if things continue as they are right now, WWE will probably keep trying to drain off AEW's popularity as much as they can, even if it is kind of limiting their own popularity, or harming it a little bit, or harming their ticket sales. But I think they, I think they'd have to hit a much farther point before they got to this point. I keep saying point. Sorry, they have to go much further down. I think before they really like reevaluate. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will, take this as a wake up call and be like, okay, look, we obviously don't want AEW to succeed because it threatens our place in the ecosystem, but we need to take care of ourselves first. Maybe that'll be the priority, over the alternative of just focusing on trying to make things as bad for AEW as possible. I don't think we're going to see them fully abandon things. They're definitely not going to just be like, well, at this point, we should just let AEW book whatever building they want. But I do think that there's got to be a point where they are like, okay, look, the positives are being outweighed by the negatives, and we have to change how we are approaching this.
No, I agree. I understand some of the counter programming stuff. Obviously, putting NXT across from AEW at the start, I still think was a really good decision, especially because NXT was never going to be a brand that drew a ton of eyeballs. But if you could take some wrestling fans and take it away from AEW, I thought it was a really smart move. But where things really fell apart was the booking just sucked. And they couldn't keep anything cohesive. They couldn't grow the talent that was there from a storyline perspective. And AEW just blew them away. Where if you had cohesive booking in NXT, I think it would have been much more of a competition. But that was the big problem. They didn't have a good booker. And they still don't have a good booker. Chef Michaels, I'm telling you, he ain't cooking for a Michelin star restaurant. He'd barely be able to cook at the Applebee's I worked at. You have to have things go right for you. You have to have people in the positions that are successful. And I think the lack of really good booking across the board is one of the reasons why the counter programming stuff, Fred, just doesn't work out that well. Like, if this Evolution show had any buzz or were booked at all well, I think it would be a really, really good spot. And it would be selling a lot more tickets and it would be getting a lot more discussion leading up to it. The problem is, Fred, I couldn't tell you anything that's going on at that Evolution show. Not a single thing.
Tiffany Stratton versus Trish Stratus is the main event, I think. But beyond that, yeah.
Look, I love Trish Stratus. I've always been a fan of hers. She's got this incredible combination of look, athleticism, and charisma. But she's almost 50. Why are we putting her in the main event of this show? Why aren't we trying to build up some of our other young stars to put opposite of Tiffany Stratton? Obviously, this is just a device to get Stratton over and get her over even more, which I understand that. But why aren't we trying to do more with the glut of women, talented women that we have on this roster?
Is that a hypothetical question, or is that just
look, it's
because I can go here. I can go here.
You and I know why. It's because they're stupid.
It's not. I wouldn't say they're stupid. Okay, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second here. WWE is obsessed with the past, and they can't let it go, and they can't help themselves. And the problem is that they don't trust the new stars to do better than the old stars. And look at how they presented Goldberg with Gunther. And that's just kind of, the whole deal. But anyways, don't soapbox.
I do think that's also a good point. They don't trust their young stars. They haven't for years. It's one of the reasons why CM Punk left the company, because they just kept going back to The Rock. Now, you had a chance to do Rock Cena. Screw you, Punk.
Oh, you should have 100%. Yeah. Punk was not right there.
2 years in a row, though, okay, fair enough. I understand. But I think if these shows were just better booked and they had talent that was over, like Triple H could have done anything and the crowd would have eaten it up for years. All he had to do was try and get 2 or 3 more people over to a high level, and he chose not to. And then I think we'd be having a much different discussion about these shows. But I think if I'm TKO Endeavor and I look at this and be like, you need to stop doing this. This isn't working. we are making less money because you want to be petty. Stop. Wouldn't shock me if this is the last real time that they're allowed to counter program.
We'll see.
Because
I have to think the strategy comes from beyond just Triple H. Frankly,
yeah, it might be coming from Nick Khan, who only has a lot of respect and admiration for Vince McMahon. I don't know if you knew that, but I'm very intrigued to see what final ticket sales for all of these do, because right now All In is beating all 3 shows combined.
yes.
And considering Evolution is a pay-per-view, I will not call it a PLE. It is a pay-per-view. Like that and Saturday Night's Main Event should beat All In. Where All In's at right now. And that's not even including the NXT show, which probably will end up about 2,000. But right now, All In is smoking them. And I think that's a big problem for WWE and a huge win for AEW from a perception standpoint. We have one more thing to talk about before we go on the heat check, Fred.
Yes.
Do you know what that is?
What's that?
FTR Outrunners.
Oh, yes.
Oh, good Lord. When Match of the Year comes around, this is going to be my vanity pick. This is going to make my top 10. This match was great.
It did rock a lot. I thought it was a fantastic match. I went 4.5 on it.
So did I.
Really good week of wrestling, though, for AEW. I mean, I loved the 6-man tag from Dynamite with Bandito, Kyle O'Reilly, and Strong against the Young Bucks and Takeshita. I went 4.25 on that, and I also went Notebook on Okada Ibushi. Yeah, let's talk about that too, because Ibushi looked great, I thought.
Look, Ibushi's never
relative to expectations. I should add quickly, but
Ibushi to me is going to be slotted as like a mid-carder to upper mid-carder who people beat to go to as like a mini boss. Like that's going to be his place on the card. Maybe he wins a TNT title. I actually think my biggest hot take is Okada beats Omega, and then the Golden Lovers do a tag run.
Okay.
That's where my brain is thinking, because that's a good use of Ibushi, and you're paying him God knows how much money. And Omega has openly talked about, with his interview that he did with Dave Meltzer this past weekend, that he thinks he's almost done. He thinks he's winding down heavily, and he's only in his early 40s. But that style is not conducive to a long career. What's a great way to extend it? Tag team wrestling.
Yep.
You can do short spurts and not do 30, 40-minute epics. But and that's kind of how I figured. But yeah, Ibushi was great. He's still got some snap in those kicks. He's not quite the same athlete. He's lost a step there. But he's got great chemistry with Okada. And you got a G1 main event on a Dynamite. That was cool. It felt big. Okada put his working boots on. He knew what this meant. He knew that if Ibushi looked good like he did in that first match against Beretta, that Okada would be the one blamed for this match not being good. And it was awesome. It was great to see that Ibushi still has a little bit left, because that Marufuji match was
I still haven't brought myself to watch it.
It was an embarrassment. It was,
yeah.
And Marufuji is not one to put in a ton of effort usually, but that was bad.
Yeah, he's got his own health issues too. But yes, Outrunners, FTR, that match was tremendous. Big kudos. Obviously, FTR is fantastic, and I mean, this is just another example of why, but big kudos to the Outrunners for stepping up, and they were in a big spot and they delivered big time. I thought they had a great performance in that match, and I mean, like, FTR is just one of the best tag teams of all time, and I think this was another really strong point of that argument that FTR basically is fantastic.
Oh my gosh. It felt like a throwback to Jim Crockett Promotions, because Of course it did. This is FTR we're talking about, but they barely did anything on the outside. Stokely only cheated at the very end, holding Truth Magnum. Truth is the shorter stockier one, right? And Turbo is the balding one.
I think so. Truth, I think, was the one that did the blade job. If I have that right. Though I could have that. I have a 50-50 shot, basically. So.
Yeah. But holding him back, and they got a camera. They didn't get a camera shot of it right away.
Yeah, that was a problem. Yeah.
No, I liked it.
Oh, really?
I thought it was great because you didn't feel like in real time you felt like he was trying to get up, but you didn't see it. I kind of preferred it that way because then it's like, oh, Stoke got the leg. Oh, that's brilliant stuff.
I think my complaint is that they didn't make it a big enough deal, and it was Magnum that was bleeding apparently. So there we go.
Okay.
I think they should have, like, right after the pinfall, showed it very obviously on the screen rather than kind of off to the side as they did. But yeah, I'm fine with it not airing during the actual pinfall. That's fine with me.
Yeah, it was. I just thought the match was great.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think, and I know we've talked about it before, I'm starting to think maybe they just have something with the Outrunners. And maybe they're just not a jobber team.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously more than just a jobber team. The question is, are they like a fun mid-card act? Or are they like the Godfather for 2025? Or can they actually be like a top-of-division team? Now, I hope that we get this match again. In fact, what I would like to see is maybe on the pre-show you do, let's say an 8-man tag with some of the people not on the show. So FTR and the Gates of Agony against the Outrunners, and I had that babyface team ready to go. Maybe Top Flight or something.
They're not baby faces anymore unless Scorpio Sky is a babyface.
Oh, I thought Scorpio Sky was supposed to be a babyface after Collision.
Is he? I don't know. It's Scorpio Sky. He's boring.
I mean, yes, we can knock Scorpio Sky for many things, but I thought his presentation was babyface, and I thought that, frankly, it was the best possible use of Scorpio Sky, but that's kind of another discussion. But anyways, in this 8-man tag, you have, you can have the Outrunners get their win back on FTR, and then set up another match between the two on a big Dynamite or something. I think that'd be great. Unless like Copeland comes back this Saturday and like is instantly kicking off the storyline with FTR.
That could be. I'm really intrigued to see what happens with this 3-way tag match for the titles. I think Collision gave us a little bit more of an idea of what that's going to look like, but I think now's probably a good time to get in the heat check, Fred.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Am I offering up the matches, or are you this time?
Fred, this is your baby.
All right,
let's offer up the matches and we chat.
All right, well, let's go to Wikipedia, and we're going to have to do this in reverse order because we got 8 matches at this very moment. It is Monday, so there's probably going to be a few more added this week. Nothing announced for the pre-show, so that alone should be 2 or 3 matches. But we'll start with the bottom of what I'm looking at right now. We have the Hurt Syndicate, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, defending their World Tag Team Championship against Jet Speed, so Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey, and the Patriarchy of Christian Cage and Nick Wayne. Where are you at on this one, Tyler? 1 to 10.
I'm at an 8. I'm really intrigued to see the booking of how this match, and I alluded to it right before we started. So the whole idea with the angle on Dynamite was that the Jet Speed is just not going to give up. They are going to make the Hurt Syndicate or Hurt Business. It's Hurt Syndicate. I keep getting them confused. Kill him.
Yeah.
And they made him keep coming back to the ring and put him out, and they just wouldn't give up. That's a device where they're going to win. You don't do that and then just have them lose. You'll just make them look like absolute geeks. Where this gets really interesting is Collision. Three-way match with Nick Wayne, Kevin Knight, and Shelton Benjamin. Benjamin takes a fall, and he takes one after Nick Wayne hits his finisher, and then Kevin Knight hits his twisting frog splash on Nick Wayne while he's on Benjamin to then score the pin. So it's almost like Benjamin took two finishers to go down, which that's just good business right there. So he got some of his comeuppance, but does that mean that you're going to get Jet Speed to win the titles? Could they end up losing the belts because Nick Wayne and Christian Cage come in and have some underhanded tactics? There's a lot of directions you can go. And I think the one I've settled on is MJF is the reason why the Hurt Syndicate loses the tag belts, but they don't get pinned.
That makes sense to me. Now, I do think a great question at this point is, there's been some discussion about, are the Hurt Syndicate willing to do business? Now, I will say that I don't think there's been a match yet where the Hurt Syndicate should have lost. Or even individually, outside of like the Sheldon match right here. And if Sheldon's taken another fall in a single match, that's fine. But it's kind of like there is a extent of like the Monet booking where you put people over so they get over. That's the idea. The thing here is, would you be shocked if like, when they set up that Swerve Strickland Lashley match, that Lashley was told he was taking the fall and Lashley said, "That doesn't work for me, brother." I can't say it's out of, the possibility. Because they did instantly move on from that storyline. And they pretty quickly were like, well, Swerve's just doing his own thing now. He's done with the Hurt Business. Hurt Syndicate. I don't know. I do think we are at the point where it would make sense for MJF to turn. To stab them in the back. I will also say that if they wanted to wait another month or 3, that would also make sense. No problem there. I think what is really interesting is if I assume Jet Knight will take the titles here because he kind of have to, otherwise they look like total geeks. But if Jet Knight if they get the pin on like Nick Wayne, I can see that making sense from a storyline thing, but it doesn't do anything to quell the, Hurt Syndicate is not doing business, if you're part of the pun. So that will be really interesting. I'm at a 7 here. I think they're going to be hard pressed with the current card to not have the worst match on the card, which is the Hurt Syndicate thing at this point, is to be in the lowest rated match of the pay-per-view. But I think as it's set up, this could actually be very good. So I'm not complaining about the structure or anything. We'll just see how it goes. I don't want to read too much into the finish because I can also come up with like a creative direction where it makes sense for Kevin Knight or Mike Bailey to pin Nick Wayne or even Christian Cage instead of Bobby Lashley or Shelton Benjamin. But it's kind of, we'll see,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different paths that this could take that are really, really intriguing to me.
Yeah, creatively, it's a very intriguing match. Match quality, I think it's going to be like 3 3/4 stars.
And you know what?
Which isn't bad. Nothing wrong with that.
I do wonder if working a big stadium show in front of 20,000+ is going to get the working boots on, because I thought the 3-way and Collision was really good. I gave it 4. I went notebook on it.
I think I went 3 3/4, so just outside. But yeah, it was good. I liked it.
And I thought Benjamin was a really big part of why it got that rating. It wasn't just because Knight and Wayne were doing all this crazy stuff. No, Benjamin was throwing them around, and it really, really worked. Like, I'm not too concerned about the Hurt Syndicate and doing business for themselves yet.
Mm-hmm.
I will be concerned by it in like, I don't know, 6 months if we're still just kind of treading water with this. And then I think you can have some of those, but it's obvious that these guys are getting a push. Benjamin's lost a couple times already on TV. He lost to Swerve Strickland before the Swerve and Lashley match. I thought it made sense for Lashley to get the win there, but everything is about the follow-up. When is Swerve going to get his win back? Like there are levels to it. And I have no problem with them getting a push because it was the one thing that WWE fans were upset with the company about, that they didn't give these guys a really big push. They didn't.
We got hiccups over here.
Yeah.
Woo!
Hiccups, and Odie is
a dogfight. Oh man.
Outside of their fighting.
Oh my
I'll
God.
give you a nice little.
You know what?
shot.
I'm good. I'm good at the dog humping. I'll be frank.
Oh no, he's not humping. They're just playing.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, it's I'm going to be intrigued to see what ends up happening. It's this whole Hurt Syndicate thing is very interesting, but I think MJF's going to come into major play here.
All right, our next match is Kyle Fletcher. Oh, what? Oh, go ahead.
I just had one thing pop up. What if MJF's not even ringside at all? Because he's in the gauntlet.
That's a possibility. Like I said, they could punt this down the road. I don't think they have to do anything as far as a turn at the show. They can wait. I think that'd be fine. I think they could even take the titles off Hurt Syndicate without having MJF turn. We'll just have to wait and see. All right. Next match is Kyle Fletcher challenging Adam Cole for the TNT Championship. And I'm going to go with... I've got a 7 on this. I think Kyle Fletcher has been one of the best in-ring performers this year across the globe. I will say that I think we're past peak Adam Cole by a few years now. I'm not saying he's completely washed or anything. I'm not as negative on him as other people maybe. But I don't think we've really seen a great Adam Cole match in a while, if I'm not mistaken, especially a great singles match. Let me check my notes here. Yeah, it's I don't have the best singles match I have for Adam Cole is a 3.5 from back in March with Daniel Garcia. So not exactly setting the world on fire, but Kyle Fletcher rules. So I could see this being great. And I could also see this being a little bit of a disappointment. And I could see it even charting lower than the Hurt Syndicate tag, depending how things go. But I think Kyle Fletcher has to take the belt here. I mean, it just makes sense. I can't see a world where it makes sense. Yes.
No, you glitched out on me. Tony Khan won't do it, but I want a squash. I want a 5-minute
That would be great.
match. I want Fletcher to just beat the ever-living piss out of Adam Cole and it to be done. And I do think with how much depth there is with this roster, and I do think the gauntlets are tremendous when it comes to getting more people on these stadium shows while giving you something unique and giving you something good, because these gauntlet matches have been good. And I'm very intrigued from that perspective. I think that this is a match where you don't have to give a ton of time. Beat his ass, win the title, get your crowning moment, and then boom, be done.
That would be Tony Khan-like, but I agree. I think that would be great, actually. So fingers crossed that we get that. I will add here that I would not be surprised if Daniel Garcia turns on the show on Adam Cole, or if he turns on Collision or something. It feels like they're setting up a heel turn by him, with Adam Cole being the oblivious babyface who's like, I thought we were friends, kind of gimmick. I just think it's time to take this belt off Adam Cole. He hasn't really done much with it. I can't really compliment his performances lately. Like, it's not like he's terrible, but he's certainly not up to the normal AEW champion standard. So I think it's time to pull the trigger. And I'd be happy if it was a 3-minute match. That would make a lot of sense to me. Especially with what one assumes are, two very long gauntlet matches, and then you have to think the Young Bucks are going long, and also Moxley and Page. And Toni Storm, Mercedes Monet has to go at least 15. So I think that'd make it'd be very logical. And also Omega Okada. So
Omega Okada is getting 30 to 40.
yeah.
It would be hard for me to see a world where they're under 30 minutes. Texas Death is probably going to be 40 minutes. Let's just be real. Toni Storm and Mercedes, I think going under 20 would be a disappointment. It's be interesting.
Yeah, Mariah May, Toni Storm was only 15, if I recall correctly, and that was perfect. So
yeah, but I also think we're like, I like Mariah May as a worker, but we're working on a different echelon here with Mercedes. They deserve to have an epic. The Mariah May Toni Storm match, which you're alluding to, the death match, they were just trying to kill each other and they went hard and fast. I think the style of match is going to be way different. And because of that, that's why I think going under 20 could end up it may not be a mistake for how it appears on television, but the stopwatch people are just going to be absolutely enraged that match didn't get more time, which I'm going to be honest, it deserves that kind of time. They've earned it. And you and I, Fred, we agree in equality, but equity's got to pair with it with some of the stuff. They have equitably earned one of the longest matches on the show because of how good the feud is and how good that they have been. They deserve one of those top spots. They deserve to have their name on the marquee, and when they walk into the back, they're like, you got 25 minutes. So if it's short of that, I think it'd be disappointment.
I'll again say that they can get by with 15. A really tight 15, I think, could work really well.
I'm not disagreeing from what the match will look like. I'm saying from a perception standpoint, from an outside perspective, it could be a really bad look. And I think those two things can coincide with each other.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay against the Young Bucks with the stip that if the Young Bucks lose, they will be stripped of their EVP titles. And if Ospreay and Strickland lose, they cannot challenge for the World Championship for 1 year. You go ahead, Kyle. Oh, God. Tyler. Yeah.
What, do I look like a can of Monster or something? Come on. You know what? I'm at a 10 for this because this is one of the few matches on the show. Like, I think we feel like we have a good read on a lot of these matches on how it's going to go. I have no clue who's going to win this match because I think you can make really good arguments for both sides. The Bucks being stripped of their on-screen EVP labels, I think, would be a really good thing for the show. I also think Ospreay and Swerve not being able to challenge for the title over the course of a year could be a really good thing for the top of the card, because the high up top of the card is very crowded right now. Hangman, Moxley, you got to assume Bryan Danielson's coming back, and he's going to be at some way, shape, or form included on the top of the card. Okada has to challenge for this title at some point. Omega, Darby Allin is coming back. Who knows if they want to do anything with Eddie Kingston, MJF. The top of the card has a lot of different people, and you can only do so much. So from a booking standpoint, this would actually be a really good crutch to have, where Ospreay and Swerve cannot challenge for the belt, but they can still do things, Fred. They can challenge for the tag belts. And then eventually, Swerve, if this comes to fruition, will turn on Ospreay, because Ospreay was the one who had this stipulation put into place. And now all of a sudden, you have to wait a year. Well, Ospreay's probably not getting his big win until Wembley anyways. So all of a sudden, now it works for storyline too, where, hey, you can now build up Ospreay for a year and get that big title win in his home country. Like, you can make a really good argument for both sides. Plus, the match should be phenomenal. The Young Bucks are masters at putting together these kinds of matches, and they've got two great opponents in Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland who have really good chemistry together. And I think from an on-screen perspective, you can make a case that because the Bucks have more chemistry, that's what ends up winning the match. Because not even Ospreay and Swerve were on the same page with the stipulation. So I think I've talked myself into the Bucks winning, but every option is on the table right now. And I think that makes this match so much more fun. Plus, it's just going to be a bonkers match with these four individuals.
Yeah, I think it will be a fantastic match. I am slightly concerned that we're going to get a Bucks win so that they can set up a Swerve and Ospreay feud. I think that would be entirely too soon. Plus, it would lead to a continuation of the EVP gimmick, and I thought we were done with that when they went away for a while. So, I'm not exactly hyped up for even more of this kind of nonsense. But other than that possibility, I think this match should just be fantastic. I think that we should see an absolutely a potential match of the year candidate, potential match of the year winner, frankly, between these four. And I think this could be just fantastic. So I'm at a 10 on it. I think it should. I can't wait. Basically, it's going to be one of the highlights of the weekend, and looking forward to it.
I can't wait, man. This, I've got people coming over. I'm making smoked hot Italian beef sandwiches. This is gonna rip.
Yeah. Let's see. So coming up, I'm just going to hit these together. Are the men's and women's casino gauntlet matches? For the women, the only participant that is confirmed at this point is Chris Statlander as the first entrant. And for the men, we know Mark Briscoe and MJF are starting off. Mystico is also an entrant for the match. I think these both should be very fun. I don't think either is going to be a 5-star classic or anything, but both should be a lot of fun and potential to be great with both of them. We'll see how they go. Interesting to see if they debut anyone this weekend. I haven't really heard rumors of anyone coming in, but you never know. This could be Copeland's return, I suppose.
Darby
is a big one. Or I would have
Eddie
Darby
Kingston?
come. Eddie Kingston, possibly, yes. I don't think any women have been out.
Dr. Britt Baker.
Britt Baker. Her contract situation is something we'll have to talk about sometime.
So I think she's under contract for a couple more years.
Well, that kind of settles it, doesn't it? If she's coming up, I don't know that I'd be rushing to re-sign her. I read about a little bit about that on my Patreon last week, about how I think you could argue that she doesn't fit into the division anymore, and so she is leaving the company like this. I think it'd be one of those mutually beneficial situations. But it'll be interesting to see where they go because it's just wide open. I mean, they've used these kind of matches before just to set up a quick TV main event. I remember, I think Brian Cage winning a Battle Royal, if I recall correctly.
That was the ladder match.
Yeah. And then
it was also during the pandemic, so I think that needs to be taken into consideration with that one.
At a very different time with the roster's depth, because now Brian Cage is a solid mid-carder and good. I'm not knocking Brian Cage, but that's where he is, and that's about where he probably should be. But they could go with someone that isn't really a main eventer, but that would be a reasonable TV challenger. Or they could set up the next big title match that way. I don't know. I'm personally of the opinion, and we're jumping ahead a little bit here. I'm personally of the opinion that, Hangman should be the one to beat Moxley. It makes a lot of sense to me. I think Darby going to Everest kind of And Hangman getting as hot as he is kind of means plans got to change. Tony Khan hasn't shown a lot of willingness to change plans, so it could be another Mox win, and then Darby returning to set up his eventual win, one presumes. But I think you got to have Hangman win here in this setting. So, but it's wide open to me who wins either of them. And it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. And but I think both will be very fun. So.
Yeah, I'm at an 8.5 from these. I think we're going to get a couple cool surprises. This is also a week before the G1 starts. So I wonder if there's a chance for any New Japan wrestlers. This might be a spot for Ishii because he's not in the G1. Shout out Ishii. This could also be, hey, let's bring in a couple of guys from Mexico. We're in Texas. Let's pop the crowd. Let's get Hechicero in here, baby.
With Mystico, it would make sense, They could also bring in another G1 non-qualifier, Chase Owens, everyone's favorite.
Boo! You are a bad person, Fred. You should be shamed.
But yeah, I think both will be fun. I'm looking forward to them. It should be very entertaining. All right. Next match is title unification match with the AEW Continental Championship held by Kazuchika Okada and the AEW International Championship held by Kenny Omega. And Tyler, I'll just let you take this one too.
So
or go first.
One thing I'm really interested in with that gauntlet match before we move on to Omega and Okada is how they're going to do the titles. Is this going to be a Christian Cage thing where he gets a damn contract and cash it in whenever he wants? Or is it going to be, hey,
hope not.
I hope not. To have the next shot, which they've done in the past as well. I like that the only two times they've really done the contract gimmick, it's been with Cage, because I think it's worked well because it's Christian Cage. And they've isolated it there. So growing it, I think, would be a big disappointment. But Omega Okada, I'm at a $5 million. I've talked to you about it. I wrote about it for the site a couple years ago. Omega Okada 1 is the reason why I'm in sports media in a roundabout way. It saved my wrestling fandom. I had never heard of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And all of a sudden I look and I see, I was staying with my best friend for a week before his wedding, helping out with a bunch of stuff. And I just scroll Twitter casually and I see Omega Okada got 6 stars. And I'm like, I had heard the name Kenny Omega, never heard of Okada. I'm like, what? How do you get 6 stars? So I sought up the match and it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life up to that point. And then that got me into New Japan. Then that got me into writing. And now media is my entire career. So this match will mean a lot to me from that perspective. And the fact that they haven't wrestled in 7 years is wild. This is like a generational type rivalry. I know you might prefer Okada against Tanahashi or Omega against Ishii or Naito. And I think those are very fair opinions. But I'm going to be honest. I think Omega Okada might be the greatest feud of all time because of what they've done, how they've linked everything together. 4 is the best match, but if you only watch one of them, it's going to be 1. The first one is, as a standalone, is so far and away the best one. But the 4th one is so good because of the first 3. And if you watch 4 as a standalone, it's not going to hit you in the same way. I cannot wait for this. I have no idea what they're going to do. They're going to have less time than they did in New Japan. Their shortest match was like 28-30, and that was a G1 basically block final. So I'm very intrigued to see what this looks like. Obviously, Omega is not quite the same anymore. Okada still has it, but he doesn't turn it on very often.
He'll have to here. He's got it.
The one thing I hope is we don't get Don Callis bullshit. Just please don't give us Don Callis bullshit. That's all I want.
He should be banned from ringside by the rules. Never mind that the whole Continental Championship rules kind of spotlights all the similar nonsense that happens in pro wrestling, but yeah, that should prevent that. So
Yeah, we'll see about that.
All right, so that leaves us with our two World Championship matches. Let's go ahead and discuss the men first. Adam Page challenging Jon Moxley. I'm at a 10 on this. I think. Well, who do you think should go over, Tyler?
It's a tough one. I'm not one of those people that thinks it has to be Darby to beat Moxley for the title. I don't think it has to be. I think it works well if it is. I think it's objectively a good decision if Darby beats Moxley, but it doesn't have to be. It's not the only path. And I think how they cart things out with Hangman, you have to have Hangman win now. You have to. You have built this up in a way to where if Hangman doesn't win, it could be a revolt. Like, you have set him up in such a position. Now, this isn't like Naito at Wrestle Kingdom 12 losing to Okada and then winning 2 years later. Like, that ended up being one of the best booking decisions we've seen in a long time. They drew a shit ton of money because of that move. But Hangman is the ethos of this company. He is the heart and soul of what AEW is. And if you don't let him or don't have him win the title, that could be an objectively awful position for Tony Khan and everybody else to be in. And I look at it and it's just Hanger's winning. And I don't think it's going to be, I mean, I think they'll make it close. I think they'll make it really entertaining and engaging, but he's got to win. And he's got to overcome the Death Riders. If you don't do it, I think it's a mistake. And that kind of stinks because going in, I did think you had a really good case for Moxley to retain and to continue to grow, but the rest of this build has kind of usurped that completely.
Yeah. I just think Hangman, the way this build has gone and everything, I think Hangman's got to go over. That's it. That's the take.
I'm really intrigued though, Fred, by what's going to happen and how they get there, because this is setting up to be a massive, massive run-ins kind of match.
Yeah, I think there could be some nonsense. Not necessarily bad. We could get like it's 10-ish minutes before the go home segment, but here comes the heels, and then here come the babyface chase them off, kind of thing. I think I'd be fine with that, frankly, as long as it doesn't like lead directly to the finish. Then that works for me.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this works.
And then we got ourselves the main event of Toni Storm defending against Mercedes Moné, the belt collector. I'm at a 10 for this one as well. I think they built it wonderfully. I think I'm hoping it'll be a top shelf match. It really should be. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait. I'm at a 10 here too. I'm at a 10 for this whole show. I'm so excited. But what's really intriguing to me is with this match, who wins? Because I think both sides can win. Both sides can take a huge step forward. I don't know. I think the path forward is they establish the world title as the top title. The TBS Mercedes will end up dropping the TBS, and then they have a tournament for it, and that becomes like your mid card title because these two were kind of treated on the same level for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I think the ultimate end goal is Willow wins.
Yeah,
Willow
I mean,
beats Mercedes for that title. But do you really take Toni Storm out of that top spot? She's been so great, and she's arguably a bigger star in this company than Mercedes. So I think you can argue both sides of the coin, and you'd be right. So this is another one of those matches where I really don't know who wins.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be very interesting to watch going forward with this one. I don't think there's a wrong answer in this case. I don't know that Moxley is like a wrong answer, but I don't think it's really the right answer, if you get what I'm saying. But with Monet Storm, I think either is a perfectly reasonable decision. Because I mean, Storm is like super over as a babyface. You could argue the top babyface in the company. I think I'd give an edge to Hangman at this point, but it's narrow. It is narrow. She's the most over any woman has been in this company, I think, to this date. And I think you could argue Monet is right there with her. So I'm glad they're doing this match. It's basically they've been building this since Monet came in. It's the right time to do it. They got the timing right on everything. I think a nice go home segment on Wednesday would just really drive it home. And yeah, I mean, the potential is here for a 5-star classic, for one of the best North American women's wrestling matches ever. And I think their floor is just only like 4.25 stars or something. You know, I guess that there's a possibility that they both just have terrible nights, but I can't imagine that working out mathematically, you know, just in terms of odds. So,
yeah. Fred, this is shaping up to be one of the biggest shows of all time.
Yeah.
Another potential AEW massive success from a pay-per-view standpoint. And it's also going to be huge for us because we will be going live on YouTube, the Voice of Wrestling YouTube channel, after the show. There will be no Rich and Joe doing a live instant reaction. So we will be doing a live instant reaction, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun, but we're going to break down the show right after it happens. I will have to test out various things on my side to make sure it's working, but hypothetically, we will be competent enough to pull it off, and it should be a fun conversation. So I look forward to everyone joining us right after the pay-per-view on Saturday.
Can't wait. And
I think
you guys go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I think that's all we got to discuss this week, or at least for this show.
That is all we got to discuss. Go watch FTR Outrunners. It's worth your time. That match was awesome. It's why tag team wrestling is great. It's so good. Give us a 5-star review. Join us after the show on Saturday. We will talk to you later.
Take care, everyone.
My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungee AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines, and we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.
Love Japanese pro wrestling? Want coverage of the entire scene, men's and women's promotions, from New Japan to Stardom, Noah, All Japan, DDT, Marigold, and more? Then Wrestling Omakase is the podcast for you. Hosted by a 23-year Puro watching veteran, that's me, John Carroll, and a rotating cast of co-hosts, we bring you a passionate, knowledgeable look at the wide world of Japanese wrestling. Wrestling Omakase is right here on the Voices of Wrestling Network. Check us out on any podcast app or feed today.